Week 16 delivers football, not just on Thursday, Sunday, and Monday. No. Saturday comes into play as the final three contests top off the regular season slate for all 32 teams. Kansas City apparently drew the short stick. Let us break down all the headlines surrounding the Texans in Chiefs territory right now. What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Happy Red Friday. I'm Hayley Lewis, and this is Chiefs News Daily. He's just a winner. CJ Stroud saying this about Patrick Mahomes this week. At the end of the day, he finds a way to get it done and make some of those critical situations happen. Well, we couldn't agree more. The young quarterback obviously showing a lot of respect ahead of his first trip to Arrowhead Stadium and his first matchup against a three-time Super Bowl champ. So let's break down this Week 16 matchup now. Give us a like and subscribe right here on the KCSN YouTube channel, and let's roll. All right, the team does not talk today like usual, even though it is Friday. There is no Fast Friday because the game is actually tomorrow. So the team is dark, meaning they're not going to talk until post-game on Saturday afternoon. So today, we bring you a special interview. We welcome James Roy into enemy territory. Now, Roy reports for Bleacher Report, covering the Houston Texans. He is also the host of The Bullpen, a Houston Texans podcast. So we're going to talk about all things Texans and Chiefs, if you didn't know. CJ Stroud and Patrick Mahomes. Starting off with this lovely clip to give us some good old bulletin board material. Tucker, roll the tape.
Pat better make a good decision. I ain't making no threats. I'm making promises.
All right, it's never wise when you come at the king, right? Because he can't miss. So they make these statements, these bulletin board material that we've seen before in the past, and Kansas City just loves to hang it up and always does well when the opponent gives them something to think about. So James, first off, welcome to the show. Second of all, what do you think about what Settle had to say about Patrick Mahomes? Is it wise, or do you think it's just, another one of those locker room interviews?
You could have all those superstitions about how player talk affects performance on the field and everything. I think it more comes from a place of where Settle has come from. The running joke during the offseason, I made it, I think everyone in the Texans fan base made it, was that all these defensive tackle targets were available in free agency. The Texans obviously did not opt to sign them, and so they settled for Settle. And so there's a chip on his shoulder, and he's performed well, far and above where he was expected to. So I think he's earned the right to talk that talk. And I mean, personally, I'm excited that Mahomes is going to play this week, because I think that that's important from the Texans' perspective to see him on the field. So I think the whole defensive line's ready to get after it, though.
But I mean to say, I ain't making no threats. I'm making promises to a three-time Super Bowl quarterback who obviously has not had the most magical or Mahomes magical year that people are used to seeing in the past. But you gotta think at some point, it's just the psychology of human nature, right? You give them something to prove you wrong on, and it's never worked out well for teams when they do that with the Chiefs.
I'll tell you, if he doesn't show up, he's not going to hear the end of it. But I think that it's good to see from him. It's good to see that confidence. I think it shows what he's been all season long. So I can see why, Chiefs obviously have done a lot of winning. Pat Mahomes is a great Patrick Mahomes. I know he doesn't like being called Pat. But Patrick Mahomes is obviously a great quarterback, and that's good, as you said, billboard material for him. So I think it'll be great feel, and I think it's going to be a great duel.
Yep. Well, you mentioned it. Settle has, he has the room to talk some of that. He has 5 sacks on the season. The defensive line has been great this season. So obviously the Texans defense going against a banged up Patrick Mahomes, who we now learned is going to be playing this coming Saturday on a short week. Definitely gives you something to think about, because Kansas City isn't necessarily all the way healthy. They've had those offensive line loopholes, as he mentioned. So what do you think the perspective of Kansas City is from the outside looking in? From the Texans fan base, what do they think about the Chiefs this season?
I think that generally speaking, there's this reputation the Chiefs have, obviously, as 3-time Super Bowl champions, that air kind of creates this, is this a game the Texans can win? I think that going into the season, this was viewed as what toughest stretch the Texans are going to have, and a lot of fans were worried about it. Clinching the division and already having the playoffs kind of takes a lot of the pressure off of that. So going in this matchup, I think, like I said, Patrick Mahomes playing is a big part of it. I think a lot of Texans fans don't want this to be viewed as, the Chiefs weren't at full strength or whatever. Like, Mahomes not playing is a lose-lose for the Texans. You either beat the Chiefs when they're not at full strength, or you get beat by a team that's not at full strength.
Right.
But I think a lot of Texans fans see the Chiefs in the Texans right now. A less than stellar offensive line play, an offense that is relying very heavily on its defense to kind of carry the team right now. They're more similar than they are not. With the way CJ has kind of taken a step back this season, the way that Mahomes isn't the same quarterback that he's been for most of his career. So I think this feels like a winnable game in a lot of fans' eyes, but I also think there's that. This is the Chiefs, the Chiefs are 10-0 in one-score games. The Texans are 7-4. There's a lot of similarities there, so I think it'll be close.
And I mean, I definitely understand that line of thought. CJ Stroud had an amazing breakout rookie season, and is this year, is it due to play calling? Is it due to the offensive line? Obviously, we have our own offensive line issues here in Kansas City. What is your perspective of that? Do you think it is just all, chalked up to be the O-line? Is it offensive play calling? What do you think is the issue necessarily?
I think the O-line's the root cause. I think the offensive scheme is complicated. It takes a lot, and I think maybe early on, like CJ played hero ball. He played, cowboy ball, not like the Dallas Cowboys, but cowboy up, and he'd make some throws. And the Texans offense has relied on explosive plays for pretty much the last 2 years straight. And when those dry up, this is what you get. The root cause is the offensive line, but I would say that scheming could be better. I mean, we've seen it. There's been a lot of shuffling on the Texans offensive line, taking Titus Howard from right tackle into left guard. A lot of personnel shuffling. So I think that at the end of the day, I don't know. They'll figure it out. But yeah, it's not going to be this season with the offensive line. They're adjusting what they can, and I think that's what needs to be fixed for sure.
All right, so a winnable game in the perspective of the Texans. Where do you think the biggest mismatch is here for Kansas City and Houston? Obviously, Mahomes is banged up. He's not full speed. There's going to be something that comes into that. But then the Chiefs also might have Hollywood Brown back, a receiver who hasn't played at all in the regular season for Kansas City, allowing maybe the most likelihood of the deep shot actually connecting for Kansas City. So where do you see the mismatch? Is it offense and defense, or what is it in your opinion?
I think both offenses are going to struggle against each of these defenses. More stones in the middle for y'all is going to be a problem. The interior offensive line is specifically what's wrong with the Texans right now. Looking at it from the Texans' perspective, I don't want to be dismissive of what Hollywood Brown is. He's a speedy receiver, and the Texans have been burnt by large plays. The general thought process, or at least what it appears the Texans go for, you give up 300 passing yards to quarterbacks like Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush threw for 300 on the Texans. The goal is just to minimize the explosive plays at score from the Texans' perspective. It'll be interesting to see if any of the Chiefs receivers draw like a shadow from Derek Stingley. Generally, the Texans don't do that. But at all levels on that Texans defense, there's not anything except for Patrick Mahomes that really specifically concerns me a lot. I think y'all put up a lot of yards. I think it'll be a big numbers game, but it'll be about if you guys can get into the end zone. And when that happens, the Texans defense is at its worst. So
what about playing in Arrowhead Stadium, right? This is an environment that isn't necessarily easy. It's very loud. The fans, I cannot say, are the kindest when it comes to certain things, and obviously cheering really loud for their team and supporting. A lot of people have talked about how hard it is to hear in Arrowhead Stadium. Stroud is still a very young quarterback, not saying that he's not up to the task, but how much do you think the environment and playing on the road for the Texans is going to play into this one?
What's the weather forecast out there in KC?
Well, right now, I think it's just going to be roughly in 35 to 40 as the lowest during the game, so it's going to be pretty nice.
That's a nice day for KC, but my biggest concern, and I've talked about this extensively with the Texans in general, is that they need to push for the 2 seed, which is a stretch with the Bills' remaining schedule, but it is possible with the tiebreaker over the Bills. Because I think the Texans are far better at home than they are away, and one of the reasons is this cold weather environment. So 35 to 40 degrees, that's what concerns me about Arrowhead. Obviously, historic stadium, great fans, and that'll be a factor, but what concerns me the most is cold weather Texans. That's why they never make it past the divisional round. They've never played a home game in the divisional round. They always go to Foxborough, they always go to Baltimore, never in Houston. So
you got me double checking the weather, so now I'm looking at it. During the game, we're thinking roughly around the high, which would be 39. So you're right. It's definitely going to be, for us in KC, a sunny, nice day, not too cold, but for Texans, definitely traveling, it could come with a few, the situations where the weather has to factor in a little bit to play. So I'll ask you final thoughts here. What do you think your score prediction is? Now, I expect you to be, a Texans favoritism here, but what do you think it's realistically going to come down to? Because I think, again, it's going to be a close either 3-point game or a 1-score game once again.
I agree with you. 1-score game. On my podcast, The Bullpen, I usually do like a storybook ending.
Okay.
This one would be pretty bland. I would put it at maybe a 24-21, which is a little PTSD for me. Obviously with the 2019 playoffs, which once again is the same issue I'm talking about. Going into KC in the second round, with Deshaun Watson going up 24-0 and still losing that game. Probably our best chance at winning in the divisional round. But to speak to this game, I'd say 24-21. I think the Texans can take it, and if I think they can take it, I'll take them. But it'll probably be a last-second field goal. And realistically, whoever has the ball last is going to win this game.
Okay, very, very good insight. And I agree with you that it's so weird to see how different, or just interesting to see how different the two teams are from those couple of seasons back to where they are now. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I'm going to say 19-16 even. I'll put the Chiefs with the final score in the win column, but we will have to wait and see how things shake out. James, appreciate the time that you took today, and we'll maybe check back in on Monday to see how we're feeling after this one. All right, folks, that does it for another episode of Chiefs News Daily. We will not be back tomorrow. We will be at the game tomorrow. It is the weekend. Enjoy it, and we will see you back here on Monday to recap everything from Week 16. Have a good one.